Hi.
Hey everybody, welcome to a very special episode of Knock Knock Hi with the Glockenfleckens. I am Dr. Glockenflecken, also known as Will Flannery.
I'm Lady Glockenflecken, also known as Kristen Flannery.
So we're not recording this at our usual time.
No, nor is it being released at the usual time for Knock Knock Hi.
Because something very special happened in the world
right.
of oncology.
Very exciting.
Yeah, it's has to do with pancreatic cancer. And there was a trial that was presented at a recent conference. And we're going to hear all about it and how this is like a game changer, an absolute game changer in the world of oncology for a cancer that is notoriously awful.
And which one is that?
Pancreatic cancer.
Oh, okay. So they...
pancreatic adenocarcinoma and I don't want to talk too much about it because I
am not an oncologist.
I don't do a lot with the pancreas. I just know you don't mess with the pancreas.
Yeah.
That's like the thing we're taught in med school, and like in our surgery rotations. No matter what, don't touch the pancreas. Don't even look at the pancreas.
It's very sensitive.
The wrong way. It's a very sensitive thing, and you don't want things to go wrong. And so, in the world of pancreatic oncology, pancreatic cancer, in the world of oncology, there is a new treatment out, or a new a target for treatment that is just a game changer. So we have the one and only Mark Lewis.
That's right. One of our favorites.
Oncologist, pancreatic cancer survivor.
That's right.
And so if there's anybody to talk about this issue,
find me a better suited person. I challenge you.
It's our good friend, Dr. Mark Lewis. So let's get right to it, shall we?
All right, let's go.
Here he is. All right, we're here. Our friend, Mark Lewis. Dr. Lewis, thank you so much again for coming on.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. This is literally breaking news, and I really appreciate you sharing it on your platform.
You just got back from ASCO. You guys, do you call it ASCO?
We do.
ASCO,
yes,
right?
It's the Super Bowl of oncology, is what it is. Yeah.
and I have been to ASCO once before, and it's what American Society of Clinical Oncology.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
I got it. Yes. All right. Where were you? Where was it located this year? Where were you?
So it's actually always in Chicago. There's only 3 places in America that are large enough to host it, or Orlando, Las Vegas, and Chicago. And they decided that not everyone has families, wants to go to Orlando. You can't trust oncologists to be let loose in Vegas, so we end up in Chicago.
Nice central location too. So there you go.
Notoriously rowdy group, the oncologists. All right, so we're gonna get to the so just to tease the audience, like a standing ovation occurred at this massive meeting for clinical oncology.
Have you guys ever seen a standing ovation for research before?
So I'm so glad you asked that, Kristen. So the answer is someone actually is meticulous enough. They've kept records of the number of standing ovations at this conference over the years. There's only been about, of course, right? And it's only happened about a half dozen times. And and really, we take a lot to convince us that something is meaningful change. It even went beyond the standing ovation. The presenter was interrupted mid-sentence by this roar of applause when he shared the data on a slide. I've never seen anything quite like it.
So before we jump into it, tell us about the disease first. Yeah. So set the stage for us here.
Sure. So I'm a gastrointestinal medical oncologist, and far and away, the most difficult, deadly disease I treat is pancreatic cancer. So this is the sobering part, but it's really necessary we kind of, again, give some background here. So the number of cases of pancreas cancer that are diagnosed every year is only a slightly higher number than the people that die from the disease. So it is very, very quickly fatal. Only about 1 in 7 people diagnosed with the disease each year can expect to be alive 5 years from now. So there's been this really brutal attrition. And the reasons for that, number one, location. The pancreas is very deep in the abdomen. We don't have any good screening for pancreas cancer. And that means that the majority of the time when we find it, it's either inoperable, can't be cut out, and or has already metastasized. And
as opposed to other GI cancers, you can do a colonoscopy, you could do all these other screening tests that can pick it up early.
That's exactly right, Will. So colon cancer is completely different in the sense we have good screening for that. But for pancreas, we don't. And so 85% of my patients with pancreas cancer from the moment I meet them, and this remains true even after this weekend's news, are incurable. They will never be cured of their disease, which means two things. Number one, their life expectancy, unfortunately, is limited. And number two, we need to be very intentional about how we are spending their remaining time, which to date has been only intravenous chemotherapy as a treatment option.
All right. And is it usually kind of the same regimen that you have typically for this, or is it different things?
Yeah. So as opposed to breast cancer, where I think it's fair to say there's about a dozen different treatment options we could offer a woman with breast cancer, patients with pancreatic cancer have traditionally only had two options. And many of them don't even survive long enough to see the second option. So for a long time, it seemed like we were never going to get a second chance to make a first impression. And again, this was a significant commitment for these people to make. I mean, imagine I told you, heaven forbid, that you had less than a year to live. And oh, by the way, during that year, you're going to have to receive intravenous chemotherapy every 2 weeks just to stay alive. That was the value proposition that until just this weekend, we were offering patients.
And on the flip side, for like operable, like then we're talking like a Whipple procedure. Is that?
That's exactly right. And there, thankfully, the survival rates were much higher because to be a candidate for the Whipple procedure, that meant the disease was localized to the pancreas, and we had found it, we had diagnosed it before it had spread to the liver. But unfortunately, the blood flow of the pancreas is such that these cells have a really, really nasty tendency to spread microscopically through the bloodstream and go from the pancreas to the liver.
Following it so far?
I do. I think I do.
All right, good. We'll definitely set the stage here. So we're in this situation that we've been in for years now, where by the time you finally get to these patients, they're often, you said 85% is incurable, and so you're most of the time you're going to chemotherapy, which will buy them. And what was the median survival?
I mean, right around a year, but again, during that year, they were coming in for treatment every other week.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's balancing like the quality of life with that and the time you have left. That's such a challenging thing to do. So now let's talk about this study.
Yeah.
What's the name? What is there? You always have the worst names for all of your potential treatments. So let's see. I'm going to test you. Let's see if you can get it out in the first try. What is?
Yes. Well, I've been practicing. I've been practicing. So the drug is called Daraxonrasib. I think that's 5 syllables. And actually, for once, I think it is a defensible name because built into the name, cleverly enough, is the mechanism of how it works, which I will be happy to explain if you'll indulge me.
Let's talk about that. Yeah. What is it? What makes this different?
Okay. So first of all, I'm going to warn you and Kristen that I don't think there's any way I can explain this without mixing a whole lot of metaphors. Okay.
Okay, it's fine.
Okay. All right.
We'll go with it.
That's my disclosure. So my first metaphor is, medicine sometimes feels to me like detective work. And the analogy here is that for years, we have known that the vast majority of pancreas cancer is driven by this mutation called KRAS, K-R-A-S. It's like it leaves its fingerprints all over the pancreas cancer. We know it's the problem. We know it's the cause. And yet, until this weekend, there was nothing we could do about it. So imagine that deep in the pancreas cancer cells, there is a switch that is stuck on, like a light switch. And if you don't turn the switch off, the cells will just grow and grow and grow with no checks and balances. Uncontrolled growth is the hallmark of cancer, and KRAS mutation has been the hallmark to date of almost all pancreas cancer. So we've known it's there, but we haven't been able to do anything about it. It's been a very elusive criminal that we just haven't been able to put into handcuffs. So the reason that the drug name is clever is, again, Ras is one of the syllables in Daraxonrasib. And on Ras, the problem is that the Ras mutation is stuck on. So, well, I don't know how much you were traumatized by taking organic chemistry as a pre-med.
I remember a little bit.
I have nightmares about that class. And essentially, this has been viewed to date as such an intractable problem at the molecular chemistry level that people thought it was undruggable. They thought it was not worthwhile even attempting to try to target this RAS mutation. Just on a molecular level, it just didn't seem like it was going to work.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, why is this? If you know, like, I don't know how. I don't want to get into molecular biology, like, too much in the weeds, but, like, why was this such a white whale of a thing that we couldn't touch?
So my next analogy is, and this is actually how it was described in the New York Times, and I thought it was brilliant. They described the protein, the RAS protein, as a greasy ball. So, moving from this light switch to this sphere that you can't wrap your hands around it. And more importantly, you can't get a drug to bind to it. So almost all of our successful treatments in oncology operate on the assumption that we can guide a drug to the cancer cells and sort of have them be attacked selectively. So for instance, some of the great leaps forward in breast cancer have been predicated on the fact that on the surface of breast cancer cells, there are usually receptors that we can have drugs attached to.
Mm-hmm.
There's binding sites. And essentially, this RAS protein was so perfectly spherical and smooth, there was no binding site. It's like, here's the other metaphor. Imagine you are a rock climber and you're trying to ascend essentially a sheer wall. There's not a single cleft to get a handhold. That was the problem. So much so that in my training, and this is true of almost every oncologist, we were taught as dogma. You can look for this mutation and find it, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. It is undruggable. Don't waste your time. And that was spilling over into research too. There were researchers who were trying to decide, what avenue do I go down? And for decades, it looked like this was going to be a complete dead end. And so people were sort of under investing in targeting this particular mutation.
Yeah.
Oh, just kind of like, we'll just give up. We'll just go put our
What's the
resources
point? Yeah.
elsewhere.
Exactly.
Why even bother? Except apparently this group,
Somebody bothered.
somebody bothered. Exactly.
Yes.
So where is this research group based out of that did all this work?
So the lead investigator was out of Dana-Farber in Boston. And the company that makes the drug is called Revolution Medicine. And their great innovation between academic researchers and industry was realizing that actually we shouldn't be trying to bind to this slippery protein at all. So the genius sort of concept is, okay, well, if your problem is that the light switch is turned on, then rather than trying to fiddle with this slippery light switch, what if you just cut the power? So they created this compound that makes what's called molecular glue. And essentially all it means is rather than working on the protein itself, you just interrupt the growth signals that it's sending down into the cell. So you cut the wire. And so now the signal isn't being relayed at all. And when I say it, it sounds so simple. This is an overnight success that took decades, right? And took such persistence. People had to be convinced that there had to be another way that we could be smarter in how we attack pancreas cancer. And it turns out this is exactly it. This was the farthest thing from a foregone conclusion. Lots of people thought it was lunacy. And yet, as you discussed at the top, it was worthy of a standing ovation at our largest conference.
Well, so and the tricky thing is, right? So you cut the power, but you don't want to cut the power to anything else.
Well said. So the most famous face now of this disease and this pill, both literally and figuratively, is former Senator Ben Sasse. And he very bravely went on 60 Minutes about a month ago with an incredibly disfiguring and bleeding rash. So to your point, the problem is the RAS protein is so ubiquitous that yes, it's great if we can target it in pancreas cancer, but it also exists among other places in our skin. So far and away, the most common side effect of this drug is rash. And so as oncologists, we are going to have to contend with that toxicity. So there's definitely side effects. And we'll talk again about the pros and cons of this medicine. It's not a panacea, but conceptually, it's such a leap forward. And again, it's adding now a year of life to these patients that they didn't get before. That's the part that we're celebrating. Not that it's perfect, not that it's entirely benign or non-toxic, but again, the concept, that the proof of concept is enormous. And as we'll also discuss, applies to other cancers too.
So let me make sure I'm following. So
sure,
it used to be, or it is until right now, that people might live a year, but on chemo.
Right.
And now, are you saying it adds another year, so up to 2 years? And no chemo. Is that
Okay.
right?
So you're kind of half right there, Kristen. So to be clear, the people in this study, they had all already been treated with chemo,
Okay.
which again is considered ethical because it was the standard of care. So you're right, though, that this drug was adding, despite that prior treatment, was adding another year of life. And again, there's another term that I was sort of alluding to earlier, which is time toxicity. So it's one thing to live an additional year, but again, to be clear, this is a pill. They don't have to come in and be tethered to an
Right, that's what I was
IV
gonna
pole to
say.
get this treatment.
Yeah.
And so that, alleviating that burden and, not having to come into our clinics and infusion centers as often, I think is a huge advantage of this approach also.
Yeah.
At what point did the standing ovation occur? Was it the graph that showed like, how did that happen?
Well, you of all people appreciate this. So yes, the standing ovation occurred when we saw a graph. Like that's how nerdy we are.
Yeah, you guys
That
you love your graphs.
we loved our graphs. And what the
Little
graph showed.
Kaplan-Meier curve
Yes,
action or
yes,
whatever. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. So it's two lines and the x-axis is time. And again, that showed that people were living now beyond a year.
Mhm.
And then on the y-axis was the separation. Now, what's interesting about survival curves is, and I'm going to be a little bit sort of sobering here, they're actually mortality curves. So the way the lines work is every notch down, unfortunately, is a patient that we lost. So what the curves showed is an early and wide separation of the curves, with the pill far outperforming traditional intravenous chemotherapy, the kind that I would still be forced to use today if my patient even survived to get a second form of treatment. So you're right, Will, that before the words could even come out of this man's mouth, just seeing the visual had all these oncologists just in an
Yeah.
absolute frenzy. We just couldn't wait to start applauding.
So, this might seem like a pretty basic question, but I know people might be thinking, okay, you cut the electricity, you cut the power off to this thing. So why is it not curative?
Right. So the inherent problem in almost all cancer is resistance. So unfortunately, it's not that cancer cells are sentient. I'll tell you as an oncologist, I sometimes feel like they have this primeval evil intelligence and they're constantly
Yeah.
outsmarting me as a doctor. But what happens again is they accumulate mutations. That's their homework. And just by random chance, these mutations can confer on them a selective or survival advantage where they can work the way around this. So I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but we're already thinking about, okay, if this buys our patients an additional year of life, what do we do beyond that? And is this finally sort of the overcoming the barrier for entry for immune therapy? Because traditionally, pancreas cancer has not responded to immunotherapy, sort of training the body to see the cancer as foreign and not self. And we think actually this pill, quite remarkably, might be capable of doing that too. So
Really?
we have to prove that.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably where we're going.
Conceptually, just hypothetically, is that the case just for pancreatic cancer, or could that conceptually potentially be true for other cancers too?
Well, what's interesting, Kristen, is again, because of not just where the pancreas cancer is located, but because of what it does, it's traditionally been probably the cancer that doesn't respond to immune therapy. And I'll tell you very briefly a story that is a tiny bit, or maybe a lot morbid, but proves my point. So I took care of a patient once in my training who had pancreas cancer and had a very clear-eyed view of his own mortality, and he knew he was going to die. And he said, Dr. Lewis, when I die, I want you to be involved in my autopsy. And it was sort of a beautiful gesture that he would ask me to do that. So, well, I don't know how often, other than gross anatomy lab, you got to do this in your training, but so I scrubbed in with the pathologist. My point telling you both this is, we opened up the abdomen. I put my gloved hand around this man's cancer, and I kid you not, it felt like concrete. Because
Wow.
what these cancers do is they generate this protective shell around them. We call it the stroma. And it is unbelievably difficult to penetrate either with chemotherapy or, this is my real point, with immune cells. It's like the immune system doesn't even know the cancer is there. It's invisible. So what we're hoping now is like a 1-2 punch of this incredible pill, sort of as a Trojan horse gets taken into the pancreas cancer cells. Maybe now the immune therapies will be able to penetrate through that shell and again, awaken the immune system and make it aware that the cancer is there, because traditionally that has just not been the case in pancreas cancer.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I want to take one quick break.
Okay.
And then we'll come back. I have some more questions.
Hey, teacher besties, I'm Andrea Forcum, and I am so excited to share with you that my book, They Never Taught Us That, is available right now. It is everything an experienced or first-year teacher needs to manage the chaos of the modern classroom, including some anecdotes to make you feel a little bit better. Because if there is a way that you can screw up, I've probably done it. It also has advice on how to build trust with families, how to manage grading and lesson plans and IEPs, and everything else that they never went over in your teacher prep program. They Never Taught Us That is available everywhere right now.
Hey, Kristen, remember how you love eyelid mites now?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of confusion out there. I want to clear something up.
Okay.
All right. People think they can get eyelid mites from dogs and cats.
Can they?
No. These particular Demodex mites are specific to humans.
Okay.
So spread from dogs and cats is not expected. That's
So
a myth.
Can't get them from cuddling our poodle.
No. Demodex mites that cause blepharitis live on humans. Most adults already have them. They just usually don't cause problems. It's when they overgrow that they can lead to itchy, red, irritated eyelids. Those little collarettes.
Mm-hmm. The crusties at the base of the eyelashes.
Right.
And the good news is there's a prescription eye drop available for Demodex blepharitis.
That is great news. To learn more about eyelid health and Demodex blepharitis, visit miteslovelids.com. Again, that's miteslovelids.com to learn more. This ad is brought to you by Tarsus Pharmaceuticals. All right, we're back with Dr. Mark Lewis. So, Mark, which patients, because there's always like inclusion criteria for like who qualifies for this type of treatment. So, is it just going to be like, because people show up with this cancer so late already, it's pretty much just anybody who shows up with pancreatic cancer can qualify for this, or how does that work?
Well, I'm so glad you're asking, Will. So one of the things that's always tempting is, we come back from a conference like this one, and we're just so eager to use this
give
new
it to
drug,
everyone.
right? Yeah, exactly. So one very key point is the FDA has yet to approve it. So there's this mountain of evidence. There's something right now called an expanded access protocol, which means that on a per patient basis, oncologists like me can apply to the company to get it. But the other part of your question is, remember that on this trial, patients had to have received prior intravenous chemotherapy. And believe me, I'm also eager to know, well, would this work if I just gave it to someone when they were newly diagnosed without intravenous chemo? We don't really have the evidence for that yet.
Right. That's not what the purpose of the trial was.
Correct.
Right?
So we still have to respect the way the study was done, but I can well envision that that's where we're going. And frankly, if you had asked me even a year ago, Mark, will there ever be a time in your career where you can offer a pancreas cancer patient an effective treatment in pill form that will outperform intravenous chemo? I just couldn't have envisioned it. I didn't have that sort of imagination or belief.
Yeah.
And now we do. And to put that into further context, the last time a pill was approved by the FDA in pancreas cancer was in 2005, and it added, I kid you not, 0.3 months of survival to these patients' lives. It was obviously not nearly as effective or dramatic, and so much so it almost became a joke that our regulatory system got to the point where they would approve a drug of such marginal benefit. Now here we are about 2 decades later, and this is completely transformative, again, in pill form.
And I don't want people to, people might think, who are not in healthcare, a year, like an extra year, like that's not,
people who have never had cancer and are not in healthcare may think
that's not as impressive as I thought. But what I want people to realize is like, no, this is like double the amount of time that these people typically have. So if you think about it that way, that's incredible, because how often do we have a new potential treatment that can double the survival?
Not only is it double, but it's a new mechanism, right?
Yes.
So you can imagine that this is just the beginning, and we'll learn more about it, and maybe other things will develop too that will extend life even further. Who knows?
This is truly a paradigm shift. So now that we know that we can attack this particular target, which again was always sort of we were told it was undruggable,
Yeah.
literally coming out of the conference, people were saying, well, now every target is druggable. If we can do this, we just have to, again, adjust our thinking. Sometimes, again, it's not going directly for the switch. It's going to that
Yeah.
downstream wiring. But that means that there's basically no mutation now that we can't sort of more elegantly design drugs to attack either directly or indirectly. It's given our entire field this incredible galvanizing
Yeah.
boost of hope. Like, we always run the
Yeah.
risk of overhyping new drugs, but this is the real deal.
What so other types of cancers? Like is there anybody that's like particularly excited outside of GI cancers?
Yes.
Uh
I'll answer both above and below the diaphragm. So these same RAS mutations are present in about 30% of lung cancer. And then
Okay.
back in the gut, they're actually present in about 40% of colon cancer. And again, Will, it's been the case of we've been able to detect those mutations, but we haven't been able to do anything about it. And you would always have kind of your heart sink as an oncologist because you would see this, again, driver of your patient's disease growing. And to not be able to do anything about it, you just felt so powerless. I often would tell the patients, oh, I found this mutation. And they were waiting for me to sort of say, and we're going to do this. But that's where the sentence ended. It was like, I found the culprit, but I can't apprehend them. Now, again, to belabor yet another analogy, there's a way that we can persecute that driver mutation, and that's just so meaningful. And to your point, it'll cross over into other cancers as well.
Yeah. So I see what a big deal, like, just on your face, like, the oncologist in you is so super excited right now.
I'm excited for you.
And I can totally see why. But I'm also curious, what is your reaction to this as a patient?
Yeah. Oh, thank you for asking. That really means a lot to me. Well, I guess before I answer that, I'll say that I had several patients who were waiting for this drug to come out, and
Mhm.
many of them died while waiting. And so it's really hard, actually, for me to think about them in particular. Some of their families actually reached out to me over the weekend very graciously and said, obviously this couldn't help our loved one, but we're so glad it could help other people. And that's just the kind of, incredible
Yeah.
open-heartedness you find in these families. But to answer your question, I struggle with my own pancreas too. And it is such a difficult organ. It's in a very tricky location. Even when you do surgery, there are long-term consequences to quality of life. So to answer your question, like, this is as hopeful as I've ever felt as both a patient and a doctor, because it completely shatters the dogma of what was driving our most difficult disease was untreatable. And
Yeah.
again, I know it feels like the giant leap. This is a small step in the right direction. Like, if we can do this, there's really no reason to disbelieve that we couldn't do this for other cancers too. And so, I always try to tell my patients that I'm trying to inspire legitimate optimism. I think that's the spirit that I'm trying to share today.
Yeah. Oh,
That's great.
I
Um,
know. I'm like a little choked up.
Yeah.
you're gonna have to make a lot of dermatology friends, I guess.
Oh,
with
well,
this,
yes. No, exactly
right?
right. So I'm actually glad you mentioned that. So as you'll appreciate, Will, nothing terrifies an internist more than a rash. And
What do you do with the rash? Yeah,
right,
exactly.
yeah, right. But since that seems to be the number one side effect, if we can be much smarter and more proactive in how we manage the rash, and you're absolutely correct. I think this is going to involve a lot of patient sharing with dermatology. Then I think we can mitigate even the most frequent side effect of the drug. And I think that'll make it a lot more palatable too. Again, all
Yeah.
credit to Ben Sass. I think he's been so brave in sharing his story. And he's also been very balanced in saying, listen, this is only a doubling of my life to over a year, and I have to
Right.
deal with the skin condition. But for him, it's worth it. And I'm so glad he shared his story.
Were there any whenever they presented the research team, presented this study, did they acknowledge any limitations, anything? I'm just curious because there's always this might could have been done better, or maybe a path for future directions or something like that.
Yeah, I think the thing we always acknowledge is that the patients that are enrolled in study are not necessarily the same that we actually see in our clinic. So as a general rule, they're healthier and they were selected as candidates for the trial. So
Okay.
almost always we acknowledge that until we get this out in the real world, when it's FDA approved, we don't actually know quite how generalizable this is. But, a lot of people were saying, oh, I worry about my patients being too old and frail to take it. Well, right now we're treating those very same people with intravenous chemo. So it's hard to imagine, honestly, this wouldn't be better, by which I mean both more effective and more tolerable.
So the next step is FDA approval. And then I'm sure there's a bunch of researchers out there wanting to sink their teeth into this and see where else we can go with it, right?
Yeah, and I think it really is going to be a collaboration between academics and industry. Again, if this research study and this company are capable of doing this, then I imagine, there's lots of pharmaceutical companies now that will really take this effort much more seriously and deem it worthy of investment. And so to me, competition here is almost certainly going to be a good thing. I will caution, again, anyone listening to this, it doesn't mean, unfortunately, that today an affected patient can get Daraxonrasib, but hopefully very, very soon. I would personally be very hopeful, even in the current political climate, that the FDA would be able to mobilize quickly and hopefully have this approved in a month or so. In the meantime, though, again, we're having to apply on a case-by-case basis to acquire it for our patients.
This was in the New England Journal of Medicine, right?
That's absolutely right, yes. It was a simultaneous publication. And, I was trying to think about, what would be a comparable leap forward in ophthalmology, a federal ban on Visine.
Visine.
Oh, God, that would be incredible.
Felony if you fall asleep with your contacts in. Or what if we found that ivermectin worked for river blindness,
Oh, boy.
Exactly.
In all seriousness,
anyway, good to see you, Mark. No, I'm just kidding.
Thanks, Mark, for steering us into those waters. But
well, no, I was just saying, because in the New England Journal of Medicine, maybe they'll let me
do a skit on it.
Do my skits.
Yes.
I've been doing those trial
the
skits
abstract skits.
I love your
abstracts. I call them. Yes.
Yeah, you could be fiddling with a light switch or something, but
I'm gonna have to practice saying the name. Let's say it again. Was it Doug?
So
Daraxonrasib.
Yes.
I keep wanting to say doxorubicin, but that's a different
that's
one.
very close. Very close.
Darax. All right, gotcha.
I would love to know just the personality of the researcher, the primary, the PI on this, because for someone to just say, I don't care what people say, I'm going to do this anyway, that's my kind of person. So it just shows the power of questioning the givens.
Exactly right. Yes. Yeah. And just persevering and to your point, really doing it for let's be honest, undertreated patient population.
Yeah.
This is clearly an unmet need. If you told me, that I've got less than a year to live and I have to go in for IVs every 2 weeks, that's a really difficult trade-off to make. And so again, I keep coming back to how this is helping patients. One thing I didn't tell you guys, if you don't mind me adding, is this also decreased patients' pain and it prolonged their quality of life. So this isn't just about they're living longer. They actually seem to be living better also. And so the researcher who, again, you would really like, Kristen, just his personality and his persistence, he was pointing out that the quality of life benefit goes hand in hand with the longevity benefit, which I thought was wonderful.
Yeah. That is amazing.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, thank you so much for you came back. You're going back to the meeting now, right? You just came back just to record this podcast. Now you're going to go back and hear some more. No, I think you're done, right?
I came back to start submitting applications to get this drug for some of my patients, actually. So,
that's much more important than talking to us.
No.
Yes. What are you doing? Get out of here.
We're gonna wrap this up. You go submit some applications. Let's get this going. No, honestly, thanks for taking the time, and we're gonna any updates that come down the pipeline with this, let us know. We'll have you come back on and we'll chat about it.
Sure.
Sounds wonderful. Thanks for hearing me out today, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Always a pleasure to talk to Mark.
Yes, he's a ray of sunshine of a human every time.
I love hopeful
Yeah.
Advances in medicine and technology and things that like really meaningfully help people.
Yeah, everybody needs a little good news these days too.
That's right. So that's it for this special episode. Check out our YouTube channel. You can leave a comment there if you have any thoughts. At Glockenfleckens, go check that out. We also have a Patreon. Lots of fun perks. Go check that out as well. Thanks to our executive producers, Aaron Cordy, Rob Goldman, and Shanti Brick. Editor and engineers, Jason Portizo. Our music is by Omer Benzvi. We are the Glockenfleckens. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching the episode. You can find more on that playlist over there. If you prefer to listen, or you just had your eyes dilated, you can binge full episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Or join the party over on Patreon, where you get early access episodes, hang out with us, get lots of exclusive bonus content. Help you subscribe, leave a comment below. Let us know what you think.